Well, I'm joined now by political analyst Karima Brown and Professor Sipho Siepe, who is in our Pretoria studios. To both of you, thank you very much for coming through. Before we start, I want to actually prompt this discussion with these two sound bites. One is from Gwede Mantashe. He was at the State Capture Inquiry in November last year, talking about the past 10 years of the Zuma administration. And then the last one, of course, is the one that we heard recently from Tito Mboweni. So let's have a listen to both these leaders of the ANC.
The first 5 years is 2007
to 2012.
2007 to 2012.
Okay.
That's the first 5 years. We did a lot of good things. I think I always boast when people ask me, what could you point? I said, the decision to break education into two departments was a correct decision. Results are showing access to education and all that. I can point a list of those things. We did exceptionally well in the first 5 years. And in the last 12 years, then things began to fall apart. It is when this issue of state capture began to manifest, and in manifesting, it took various phases. Towards the end of that 5 years, we were in trouble.
Last year, there was a lot of excitement about South Africa, that South Africa was turning a new chapter after 9 wasted years of the Zuma administration. And now we are here this year to re-emphasize once again that South Africa is on the path of renewal and growth. And I think that is an important message. And from the interactions that I've had here in Davos, I can assure everybody that our message is being well received, not without questioning, not without asking us difficult questions, which we have to answer, but I think the general reception is positive. Maybe not as exciting as it was last year, but most certainly welcoming and still a lot of interest in South Africa.
All right, let's kick this discussion off. Karima Brown, I'm going to start with you. Gwede Mantashe is very clear. The first 5 years were exceptionally well. Tito Mboweni, 9 wasted years. On a balance of probabilities, whose assessment is correct here?
Well, I think both men are correct in the sense that you did see a different mandate when President Jacob Zuma came in. The mandate was that there will be long-term planning to deal with the structural inequalities in our economy. The problem with President Jacob Zuma is that he took that mandate and he betrayed it. He betrayed it by building a state within a state. He launched a political program called state capture, and he used all the development finance institutions and all the state-owned enterprises to enrich himself, his friends, and his family. And that is what Gwede Mantashe was talking about. And the consequences of that is that we have a broke SABC, a broke SAA, a broke Alex Gore, a broke Denel, all the state-owned companies. I mean, Denel was one of the companies that was doing really, really well, and now it is in deep trouble. That happened under the leadership of President Jacob Zuma, but not just President Jacob Zuma. It happened under the leadership of President Jacob Zuma taking decisions outside the normal places where decisions are taken. And that is a point that people must actually accept. The center of power shifted from the cabinet and the NEC. And toward the end, with the firing, for example, of Pravin Gordhan, that's precisely what the ANC top 6 leaders said, that President Zuma took decisions without consulting them. The alliance complained of the same thing.
Professor Sipho Siepe, let me also give you a chance to give your assessment on these two leaders. One says first 5 years were exceptional. Then the other says 9 years were a complete disaster.
Yeah, Koli, in matters like this, you always find that the truth is always in the middle. One, the President Zuma's response was to respond with facts about what happened under his administration, and of course conveniently omitting some of the issues that Karima Brown had indicated. For instance, it is a fact that we did address the issue of HIV/AIDS. It is a fact that the life expectancy of South Africans improved under his presidency. It is a fact that more houses were built. It is a fact that the survey that was carried out in 2016 did find that South Africa is #1 in terms of provision of basic services. It is a fact that we did build 2 universities. It is a fact that we have what you call the NDP, around which government builds all these programs. These are facts. And then you also have opinions. And we need to be able to, when we deal with this, let the facts speak for themselves. It is a fact that we had in Nkandla. It is a fact that the ANC failed to manage it. It is a fact that we had a state capture. But it is also not a fact that the state capture only started with Jacob Zuma. What is emerging with Bosasa indicates that corruption and the capturing of the state by some powerful lobbies and companies happened even as early as Mandela and Mbeki. So when we deal with these issues, we can accept that, and as Jacob Zuma himself says, that there were mistakes, and the ANC also accepts that. But where we fall short is where we don't appeal to what the Constitution says. The Constitution of this country is very clear. Section 92 says cabinet members are individually and collectively accountable.
All right,
so when you are a part of the team, you must assume that responsibility as well.
Professor Siepe, all right, thank you very much. We've got that. Here's an interesting extract of what the former president has had to say in that statement where he's defending his own legacy. And I want my team to put it up where the former president is quoted as saying, "I never once blamed any predecessor or pointed to any perceived failing of any predecessor when I came to the leadership." Karima Brown, I want to ask you this question. What has invited this harsh criticism of the former president Jacob Zuma's legacy? What is it that is causing members of his own party to come out this harshly against him?
What is forcing us to critique him is the fact that state capture is said to have cost the country 100 billion rand. And that's a conservative estimate. Other economists put it at 1 trillion. Some people say that we have lost, as a consequence of state capture, the opportunity of creating 1.2 million jobs. The point is that we have all our state enterprises, all our state-owned enterprises are bankrupted, even the ones that were doing really well. Right. And President Jacob Zuma is involved front and center, as we've seen coming out of the commission, through Barbara Hogan, through Thabisi Jonas, through
Pravin
Gordhan, and a whole range of people, that on President Jacob Zuma's instructions, certain governance issues were actually just ignored. And we must admit that in the African National Congress, there are competing political projects. President Jacob Zuma's political project was to actually build a state within a state. The academics who did the betrayal of the promise report compared it to a coup. If you look at the criminal justice system, today we're sitting with a situation where the SIU 10 years ago gave the NPA a report to say Bosasa is involved in corruption. President Jacob Zuma made sure that the people he put in place there never prosecuted any of those people. Richard Ndluli has a 10-year accusation that he was involved in the killing of his lover's boyfriend. President Jacob Zuma made him the head of crime intelligence. This president chose his presidency to erode state institutions. If we look at SARS, the commission of the Nugent inquiry is absolutely emphatic about the fact that SARS was hollowed out of skills and of money. We're sitting with a deficit of 57 billion rand. And I want to come back to where the decisions were being made. The night that Musibenzi Zwane became the minerals minister, a 2-page paragraph was released at 9 o'clock in the evening to announce that he was the minister. The alliance immediately said, we know absolutely nothing about this. The cabinet decisions, for example, were often not implemented. We have a situation where Faith Mutambi ignored a cabinet decision on encryption and did what MultiChoice wanted her to do. So President Jacob Zuma's government is open to critique, must be critiqued. It is under him that the ANC lost 10% of the share of the vote. It lost 3 municipalities, the richest one in Johannesburg, the administrative one in Tshwane, and the heartland, the psychological heartland of the African National Congress in Nelson Mandela Bay. The fact that he didn't criticize his predecessors is neither here nor there. But let me also say this, Collie, to focus on President Jacob Zuma's intervention now is in fact a distraction. This man is facing corruption charges. He has to go before the Commission of Inquiry. We have to actually focus on how to clean up the government, how to bring policy stability back, how to actually rebuild our institutions, and how to grow our economy. So President Jacob Zuma is, in fact, as far as I'm concerned, a complete distraction. It is an attempt to deflect from the issues that is before us.
All right. Professor Siepe, let me give you a chance as well to weigh in here, but I want to ask you this question. Is President Cyril Ramaphosa helping the situation with his constant endorsements of his predecessor whenever he's in front of him, but when out of sight, it does appear that the president, the current president, does go on the attack? Should President Ramaphosa basically stop pretending when it comes to former President Jacob Zuma?
Well, I think the first comment I would like to make is the issue of President Zuma being a distraction. I actually agree with that. And if the leaders of the ANC should be focusing on is moving forward, blaming somebody when you are part of the administration, and I'm glad that at least there is a concept called the Zuma administration, and that Zuma administration was made of a whole number of people, including the current president. And the question that people will ask, if you are part of a team and the team fails, normally you accept the responsibility as having been there, because what you need to do is to say, this is what I did in the last 9 years to make sure that the outcome is not what it is now. And secondly is the issue that I consider to be dishonesty, or inconsistency that you are also pointing out, that when you need members of the ANC and you talk about unity, then you go around endorsing the very same person that you spend time attacking. But I do think that right now, what we would like to hear from the ANC leadership currently is the vision on how to take the country forward, the vision on how to address the economy. Simply finding fault is not going to take us anywhere. And as Karima Brown says, there are issues that President Zuma must answer, and we have the process already in the courts. And let's let the courts deal with it. What we have far greater challenges to deal with than to be distracted to a number of things. But at the same time, we also need to be very balanced in terms of thinking that one person has that power. If one person has that power, then it says a lot about the ANC, that the ANC itself was captured by one person.
All right, Professor Siepe and Karima Brown, I have to end it here. I would have loved to give you a chance, because this question on President Ramaphosa pretending in front of Zuma.
No, I don't think President Ramaphosa is pretending. I think President Ramaphosa is actually quite smart in saying that President Jacob Zuma is part of the African National Congress, but he's not going to escape the rule of law. Even if he's in the ANC, he has to appear in court for his charges. But I think the ANC actually has the mechanism to deal with President Jacob Zuma. I think they should bring him before the disciplinary committee for sowing division in the African National Congress, because that is where he actually needs to be addressed. He needs to be addressed in the ANC as a person who is in fact distracting the party from its election campaign.
Karima Brown, Professor Sipho Siepe, thank you very much for having made the time to come through. Fascinating indeed, this discussion. Time, unfortunately, is against us.